Okay, good evening everyone and welcome to the Hampshire Cricket Board pre-season webinar. It's great to see so many people on the call this evening. We are due to have about 100 people on the call, so thank you very much for giving up your time to listen in this evening. If I could see you, I'm sure there'll be lots of familiar faces on the call, but in case I haven't met you before, I'm Ben Thompson, Cricket Development Director at HCB. Presenters for this evening from HCB are Cricket Development Directors Rob Pfeiffer and Simon Jones. In addition, we've also got two special guest presenters with us this evening. In Matt Camp, Competition Manager from the Hampshire Slam, and Neil Higginson, Facilities Planning Manager from ECB. Just before I pass over to Simon Jones, just a couple of housekeeping points. I think Rob Pfeiffer's already muted everybody, but if you could just stay on mute this evening just to cut out any background noise, that would be much appreciated as always. Just to let you know, we are recording the call, and questions, please put any questions you've got in the Q&A function, which is at the top of your screen. Given the numbers on the call this evening, we don't intend to open up for questions. We may answer some over the chat, but what we do intend to do is just put together a frequently asked questions page on the website, and we'll put the recording of the call on there as well. So feel free to pass and circulate amongst your clubs for anybody that hasn't been able to join live this evening. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to Simon Jones to get us underway.
Good evening, everybody. And I think the first item up, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our county pitch advisors, reintroduce you to one of them and introduce two new ones to you. You'll see the photos up there. So I think we all know, and for many years, our sole pitch advisor has been Chris Westbrook. We're looking to expand our support to clubs this year by getting an inquiry form for clubs, being able to go out to more places, work with more club grounds and local authority grounds. So we're going to set up a Hants Pitch Advisors email address. So we're going to be in contact separately about that, but we wanted to let you know who else we brought on board to add to Chris's excellent work. So first one, Nigel Gray, ex-head groundskeeper here at the Aegeus Bowl, has joined us. And secondly, Lee Padwick, who maintains a number of grounds in Hampshire through his company Pure Sports Turf Management. So what we've decided to do is, obviously we have three pitch advisors to support us. If I could have the next slide, please. So just brief mention of our updated web pages. There are more changes to come, but you'll get these all in the show notes. So our grounds management pages are on our hampshirecricketboard.co.uk website. There's details of the Hampshire County Groundsmanship Association and more information about GMA, formerly the IOGA, GMA courses, etc. all on that page. So that's the first item, and I'll hand over now to Rob for the County Cups. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Good evening, everybody. Brief update from me initially on County Cups, Junior County Cups. That's all county competitions from under 11s up to under 19s. The entries are now open for all boys open and mixed competitions. The same format as last year for all competitions, with the under 11s, under 16s being a 100 ball format. The aim is to make all of the rounds, first rounds to be local before spreading county-wide, and then a final at the end. Entry, please, by the 28th of February. We've got 42 club entries across the various competitions so far, and then the rules and draw will follow in March. And the entry form is there, and obviously that will be copied into notes to be sent out to you tomorrow. That's it for me, and I'll speak to you again later.
Thanks, Rob. So our next stage, you may remember last autumn, we conducted a player and volunteer survey following up from the Southern Premier League's survey, which was questions about your cricket experience and your experience of us, Hampshire Cricket Board, as an organisation. So I'm going to whistle through just the headlines of these slides. More games last season played than ever before due to the fantastic weather. In fact, there were games were lost due to pitches being too dry as opposed to too wet. Continue to see a large number of forfeited games, 8% on average, 16% at the lowest level of the Hampshire League, and some short-sided games. 40 odd clubs were helped out by the Hampshire Cricket HCL Player Loans Twitter account. The usual picture of teams sadly lost, but new teams joining, so a net increase of 6 at the start of the season. So that's a quick summing up of the matches played. Next slide, please. So we asked you of your experience of actually getting teams out. You told us that you thought it would be harder to get players to play this year than it was either last year or pre-pandemic, that the player loan scheme could perhaps be expanded, that 3/4 of respondents, players and volunteers, found teams' abilities to be closely or very closely matched from where they played, and that respondents felt more listened to by those closest to them, i.e. their clubs and teams, than by, say, the cricket board or the league, or in fact ECB scored lowest on that slide. You can see the detail from the pictures. End of season survey responses, they indicated strong support for the number of overs in Hampshire levels 2, 5 and 6. Strong support to reduce Hampshire Division 4 by 5 overs, and significant but not majority support for 5 over reductions at Hampshire 1 and 3. Next slide, please. Respondents were happiest with start times, with evidence of growing dissatisfaction the later in the day it went. The graphics represent a team of 11, and roughly half the team would be either a little or think that the end time was either little or very late. There continued to be strong support for the concept of smaller divisions teams playing home and away. Next slide, please. So, for example, you will see here that when comparing the pyramid in Hampshire, which is formed of the Southern and Hampshire Cricket Leagues, that when compared with the other 28 feeder and Premier League structures across ECB, does by far the most travelling, and it is the only one that has large divisions of teams playing once. Next slide, please. We also asked, in your cricket experience, we also asked questions about ourselves and your awareness of our role and our work. The response was actually pretty high, roughly 6 out of 7 saying they had high awareness of the board's role and work. Slight health warning on that one to say that the majority of responses that were elicited from an email to club officials who would naturally deal with us, and we are aware that there is possibly some confusion as to Hampshire Cricket, the professional county, ECB, leagues, cricket board, etc.'s areas of responsibility. We also asked what you valued most and what you valued least, was kind of a net value score. The most value was funding and support for clubs and junior and senior leagues. The least value was disability schools and urban cricket programmes. We asked also what your interest would be, and you expressed interest in participating in a group reviewing our affiliation benefits, of taking up volunteer roles, which has actually already had concrete results with volunteers recruited to leagues and organisations as a result, and interest in seeing the survey results. So kind of this is the first step in sending out the survey results to those who wanted to see them. The next step, which will happen in the first half of this year, is contacting those who are interested in an affiliation benefits group, and actually conducting that process to review the package that we offer you. And finally, the last slide, just a tiny health warning on the responses. We got close on 700 responses. Now, just to say that the sample wasn't weighted in across the board in terms of the number of people from each grade group that participate in the overall player volunteer population. And as a result, it may favour current options because the majority of respondents are already doing the activity, playing regularly, whereas the data shows that 3/4 of respondents were aged 35 plus in our survey, while more widely 3/4 of all cricketers are aged under 35. So just something to bear in mind. But that was a whistle-stop tour of the club survey.
Thank you, Simon. Back to me, and we're going to talk about ECB national programmes. So that's All Stars and Dynamos. We're now into our 7th year of All Stars, nationally, and it's going from strength to strength in our third year of Dynamos. The sign-ups opened last Wednesday for those who have signed up before to get a priority window, and we've had a really good response from that. And I understand that general registrations opens tomorrow, but that might be delayed slightly, so I will communicate with all clubs on that when I find out. To date, we have 60 Hampshire clubs registered and accepting sign-ups across both programmes, which is fantastic. Thank you again for your responses, and thank you again for setting up programmes within the club. And already, just from last Wednesday, over 500 children just in Hampshire are signed up and ready to go for All Stars and Dynamo. So a great response. It's showing that both programmes are still as popular as ever. Moving on to some action. So if you are a club running All Stars and Dynamos, then and you haven't put your session dates on, then obviously the later you do that, the less time we have to get people signing up. But there is no deadline to adding new programs. You can do that consistently throughout the summer. We've seen from the last couple of summers that actually the summer stretches out quite a long way now. So the clubs added programs in sort of August last year, and they were quite successful. I would ask all clubs who are not running Dynamos at the moment, especially those ones who are running All Stars, to consider how you would fit a Dynamos program in. There are areas of the county where there isn't Dynamos on offer for children, and we know there is demand from all the stuff we do in schools for Dynamos programs and for people to join Dynamos. So if you've got the time, it doesn't have to be alongside the All Stars. It can be in the summer again, summer holidays. If there is time and space at your club and you'd like to consider it, please do, and get in contact with me, and we can work about how that can fit into your club. And also, we've seen some real good success recently with girls-only Dynamos clubs who have started girls-only Dynamos and now have girls teams ready to enter into their junior league. So it really has been successful. And again, think about that. Think about how it can fit into your club. Those that have already got their program set up, the next thing now is to promote your sessions. We've seen some really good use of that already since last Wednesday. The ECB Resource Hub is really great. It's been updated with the new All Stars logo. You can go on there and print off flyers, print off editable flyers for yourselves and for your club, put your times and dates in. And where clubs do that and they get on social media and they get on their local community groups, it has had a big effect. We will do that as a county, and the ECB will do that nationally. But if you can do it locally, if you can communicate with your local community groups, it does have a massive effect and impact in your local community. And then finally, for me, it's just to think about your maximising the second window, maximising that July and August. This year is going to be an even busier July and August than last year, with the Ashes, both male and female Ashes happening, plus the 100, which going against anybody's personal views on it, kids do love it, kids engage with it, families are engaged in it, and there is a demand for cricket in July and August and even into September. So just think about what you can do in those spaces, and we're here to support that and think about how you can set it up. So any questions about All Stars and Dynamos, please get in touch with me. I am going to hand back to Simon. I think we're going to jump ahead in our plan a little bit, and we'll come back to the slam later, but Simon's going to take us through Clubmark.
Yes, thanks, Rob. Clubmark this year, I'm going to sort of go into 4 sections: why, what, how, when, and then go on to talk about the next steps. So, Rob, if you can click sort of through the next slides. Really sort of 4 key elements I want to talk about. The first is there are a number of elements which I'll go into, but for me and for us as Hampshire Cricket Development, Hampshire Cricket Board, club development is the major thing. Working with you closely to ensure that your club is the club that you want it to be. Our way of means of delivering that is through offering dedicated support, working really closely with you, with your development planning process, and looking at ways that we can support you or signpost you to support. One of the strengths that I see of this is that if you actually document a plan that covers your short to medium term aims, that gives continuity. We know that there is a turnover of volunteers, but the key thing is to keep the knowledge that is gained over the years to ensure the club keeps on progressing. And lastly, it's while there's no direct link to funding, it's a long time since ECB schemes have said you must be a Clubmark club to get funded. Things like the county grant scheme, the Tackling Climate Change theme is open to all clubs. The other themes are open to clubs with engage in national programs that Rob has just talked about. But I would say that kind of a lot of the activities within Clubmark do make you attractive to funders. So bear in mind, you'll be strengthening your case by engaging with the programme. So in a second, I'll go through what criteria, the 6 criteria that Clubmark are looking at, and the evidence required. Just to say, there are currently 49 clubs of our, I think something like 140 affiliated clubs within Hampshire have Clubmark, with about another 40 clubs which have either junior section and or all-stars or dynamos who would be eligible for Clubmark, and those are probably the ones we're looking to work with more closely to kind of keep the portfolio refreshed. We're looking to work close with them over the next couple of years. So the first aspect, club development. We talked about that and why that's important, why documenting a plan is important, and the evidence of that is simply your development plan. Big area in cricket, EDI, equity, diversity and inclusion. You'll be aware that imminent is the Independent Commission for Equity in Cricket's report that is coming out soon. You'll have seen a focus on this in communications from ECB. The report is going to be a difficult read, so we need to prepare ourselves for that and the actions we need to take as a result of that. So the evidence required relating to that is constitution and club policies. The next one is something that most all clubs will do anyway. You're required to get insurance to certain levels to participate in leagues, for example. And the evidence of insurance is simply your insurance schedule. The next one, good financial management, and certainly in these economic times, something that clubs I know and club treasurers and committees will be acutely aware of. The evidence for that is a copy of the accounts and bank statements, and that they are presented to members on an annual basis for review. The next stage is kind of a big area of focus in recent years with ECB Clubmark, which is governance. The evidence of that is simply a copy of your committee structure and copies of, I think, 4 sets of committee minutes and your most recent AGM. And finally, safeguarding. More specifically, the Safe Hands management system. That is a system that is now being rolled out to all cricket. It started with Clubmark clubs 2 years ago. Last year, we focused on clubs that had juniors, and now it will be all clubs, even clubs with open age, which are just open age sides as well. There's a big push, understandably, on ECB from safeguarding. We've seen incidences that happened in football, and as cricket as a sport, we want to be prepared. So the measure for that is compliance in the safeguarding Safe Hands management system, the ECB safeguarding system, which means that essentially everyone who needs to have a DBS has one. So those are the 6 elements, the 6 whats of Clubmark. How will be the next question. You may remember from the dim and distant past, probably pre-COVID, quite a long time pre-COVID, was large evidence files that kind of sat and were looked at every 3 years and depopulated large areas of forest as evidence files. That's a thing of the past now. There have been changes in Clubmark. That's one of the issues with Clubmark as well. The changes in Clubmark, and there have been changes almost every year since 2019. It was a system licensed by Sport England to ECB. What clubs told us was that it was a long piece of work, possibly too much information in it. And since control has gone now to the governing body, ECB, you're reducing from like 20 categories and across 5 sections to just the 6 you've seen on the previous slide. And it's delivered via an online portal. It also contains a helpful resources section. If you just click to the next point, thanks. It also clicks to, the first thing is that it is invested in a number of people, so up to 10 users per club can upload information. So for example, the treasurer might upload the bank statements, the secretary might upload the minutes. And also the resources section contains templates and links to policies, constitutions, risk assessments, and anything that is kind of requirement or related to Clubmark. So when, in terms of this year, I think it's helpful to say that ECB, having recognised that Clubmark is a system that has gone through quite a lot of change in recent years, are taking a step back this year and reviewing it. What I can say is that I've gone to all the existing 49 Clubmark clubs, asked for their feedback, and we'll be taking that to a meeting in Taunton this week. So it's a really good time to do it, to take on Clubmark. So what do you have to do? First date, the 30th of June is the date really to look at. First of all, by the 30th end of June this year, upload your evidence to the online portal. And what I'll also want to do by that time is visit your club on a junior training night. So let's look at the 30th of June as the first cut-off. The way the system works is that us at the cricket board will work with the club to get the evidence file ready to submit to ECB, and then they make the decision on accreditation. They go through a process which is called remediation, which means if there are any minor amendments need to be made, there's a further window up to the end of August to achieve that. So, for example, if something needed to be added to Constitution, you might need to hold a quick EGM just to add a relevant clause, such as the ECB anti-discrimination code. So that's something so that is essentially the process, and we would strongly encourage clubs, any of the 40 clubs who don't currently have Clubmark, to have but have All Stars, Dynamos, and/or junior section to engage with the process, because we really want to work closely with a lot more of you. So what do you do next? If you haven't already, you can express your club's interest by emailing ECB on the address shown there. Contact points, I'm the initial point of contact. And there are also a couple of web resources, which will be both our website and the ECB's. The pages have recently been updated, so they contain, for example, this year's Clubmark criteria, which you'll be getting. You'll get this link when the presentation and slides are sent out to you. And for example, the ECB's model constitution for Clubmark. So that's it for Clubmark.
Thank you, Simon. I'm going to, it's typical that I've made the mistake, having put this presentation together, that I've missed out a slide. So I'm going to jump back a few slides. Don't worry, we won't go over Clubmark again, but I just wanted to touch on the junior cricket proposal, which if you've got a junior section at your club, you've probably been aware of. It's a proposal from HCB and the 4 junior districts to make a change to the way that junior cricket is administered within the county, and for there to be a management committee which would administer all junior club cricket in Hampshire from April 2024. The main reason for that is to try and reduce the strain on the committee volunteers. There is a ever reducing pool of volunteers at committee level and a growing strain. We also see an opportunity to produce a streamlined playing format across the county and also pool some resources to create savings and efficiencies, things like ordering cricket balls that happens at junior level. An update on where we are with that process. So the proposal was released on the website, and a video went out in January. We invited questions and comments from all clubs, and then we've been on a county tour to present to all 4 district AGMs over the last couple of weeks, and we've held an indicative vote at all 4, and those indicative votes have been in favour of the proposal continuing. So it's now for us and for the districts to work out the next steps, form a transition panel, and begin club consultation with the mind of this starting in for next season in 2024. If you haven't seen about it and you want to get more information, then you can do that on the webpage and video, which is on the link, and again will be sent out with the notes. Thank you for that. Right, I'm going to hand over now. I'm going to fly back through the presentation and hand over to Matt, who's hopefully with us. Matt from the Slam. Can you hear us, Matt?
Yes, Rob. Thank you for having me.
I will bring your slides up. There you go.
Evening, everybody. Thank you for your time this evening. It was just I wanted to come on tonight just to well, obviously to present the Slam to you, which undertook its sort of first year last year, and I'm conscious that there's a few sort of misunderstandings, urban myths, whatever it is about it. So I just wanted to kind of set those straight this evening, really. And one of the key things about after having learned a lot of lessons last year is the fact that we're launching a women's competition this year as well. So key thing is that what it says there, this is about offering a short format competitive cricket, albeit the idea of it is that it I'd like to think of kind of from a cricketing perspective, recreationally, we kind of need to broaden our menu in terms of the cricket that we offer out there. We all know too many stories, particularly with our own clubs, of people that can't, and I'm one of them, can't commit sort of 7-8 hours on a weekend, but definitely don't want to stop playing cricket. And this provides that opportunity for a kind of a game every fortnight type thing. So on to the next one, please, Rob. So as I've alluded to there, the idea of this is each fixtures are assigned to a fortnight window. So yeah, you play on a midweek evening, and it's scheduled from I think the first week starts on the 8th of May and flows through every fortnight, a game every fortnight from there. The reason for that is that obviously there are pressures abound on grounds with junior cricket and the like, and so this provides that extra flexibility for you to be able to put your fixtures in agreement with your opponent on particular dates that work for you, rather than being assigned to a particular day of the week, which certainly doesn't work for everybody. The women's is slightly different because that will supplement the league season. So the league, Division 2 and Division 3 finish much earlier than Division 1, and so we're tagging on onto the end in August and moving slightly into September this extra competition that provides that a bit more cricket for everybody, and again that'll be a game per week, other than the first window of matches, just to kind of make sure we give everyone 4 matches, and then it'll go into so that can be a midweek or a Sunday, because they'll have that Sunday availability because their league fixtures will have finished. Regards to the Who, key thing about the Slam is it's not for the upper end of the recreational game. People at that level have got more than enough cricket to play, and so there are eligibility rules in play to prevent someone of that ilk playing. Of course, if you've got someone who plays for your second 11 at the appropriate level, but has helped out your first 11 at a higher level, just on the odd game or two, then they can seek an exemption. It's not appropriate to suddenly just cut that person's Slam season out of the equation. So there is a exemption process for that, but on the whole, the idea is that players over and above Div 1 of the Hampshire Cricket League don't participate. Although there are then even at those levels, there are restrictions to try and keep sort of as level as possible playing field. But we'll come on to that in a bit. And there again, the Women's League Div 1 matches continue all the way through to the back end of August. So this is about no one playing higher than Division 2 level. So that's the level it's pitched at. The idea, there's no point having midweek cricket if you then have to travel an hour plus to go and get to the games. So the initial stages are always localized group stages. Obviously how tight those geographical groups are, it very much depends on who's entered, so can't actually offer any guarantees, but other than you will be in a group with your nearest opponents, and then that will be what it will be. And so you get into that initial round robin group stage, the idea being that you play as many home as you do away. We guarantee everyone gets at least 5 matches. How much more you keep going obviously depends on how well you do. And then the great thing is we've as we proved last year, we then end up at on the nursery ground at the Aegeus, which was a really, really good day last year, with four great teams there. We got the music really going, created a great atmosphere, and it was a really fitting conclusion to the season. And we'll be doing that for both the men's and the women's this year. So as alluded to before, there's eligibility levels. Full details of that are on the website, which you can find, and you'll see the link for that in a bit. Like I said, the idea of that is to try and just level it out a little bit, so that it's not a case of, you know, the higher teams are always obviously winning it. And I think the proof in the pudding on that in other counties where the Slam has been successful is that if I take Sussex, for example, the 8 teams that reached the finals day last year had never been to finals day before in the 3 years previous, and I think we've only had 1 team reach 2 finals days. So there definitely is a case. I mean, in Surrey, we've never had a repeat team in a final, and that's been running for 6 years now. So it does achieve what it needs to achieve. This is all well and good, me all saying this, but then the proof is in the pudding, I think, in terms of the numbers we achieved last year. So on average, everyone got teams got 6.5 fixtures, but here are the key numbers. So that's another 21 people on average for each club playing more cricket. 2.3 of those are brand new players, and that's the key thing, is that we all know how hard it is to get new players, and if you can just broaden the menu a little bit, if I keep going on with that analogy, there is a way of getting new players. And that key number there about slam only players, you know, there is a meaningful size of people, you know, a group of people in recreational cricket that can't play weekends, and they want something else, something that fits in with their busy lives, and those lives are getting obviously back to normal now, and it's not so simple. And I think it's important that we offer that. And then, as I'm seeing more and more since the slam started, it's doing twofold. It's keeping people like me in the game, I suppose, and that's the 3.2 number. But it's also becoming a really great bridge between junior and senior cricket. And that number in the other counties, that players under 18, has grown every year. And that's about the same number in each county, actually. So it's providing it's providing the nature of T20 cricket, no matter what level you play it at, the intensity of it is great for player development. You know, the speed of it, and that's it's been really pleasing for that. So here are the proposed schedules. I say proposed because it's never absolutely confirmed until we know exactly how many teams there are and what groups they're in. But the intention is that there are the fortnightly windows that I spoke about. It may well be that it's a group of 4 where you play each other home and away, and therefore you'll be guaranteed 6 group games. It might be that you're in a group of 6 and you only play each team once, and therefore it's 5. So it's not entirely sure, but I do guarantee everyone is given at least 5 matches. And then you see the path there all the way through to finals day at the GS. And there's the women's schedule that it tags on to the back end of the season. Now, I think the key thing, sorry, it alludes from the previous slide, but I do want to make this point. Those eligibility rules that are in play, so let's say Hampshire Cricket League Division 1 players can't bat above 6, can't bowl before the 11th over. Again, similar to the kind of players that are not eligible to play in a competition at all, you can seek exemptions. So if you've got a player in your third 11 or second 11 that doesn't normally play at that level, Division 1 level, has only helped your team out a couple of times, again, it's not appropriate that they are then restricted. There is a full exemption process that is obviously based on play cricket stats that you can go through, and it's really simple, really easy, and then that person is assessed by their play cricket stats. You can see quite clearly whether they are materially of that level or not, and you can get them exempted. And similarly, it's not just about batting and bowling together. If you've got a bowler that hardly ever bats, then they can get exempted from the batting restriction, and someone who hardly ever turns their arm over, vice versa. And I think that's particularly pertinent to the women's restrictions, because we are going to restrict the participation of Div 2 players for the women's, so that we can even it out between Div 2 and Div 3 teams. But again, you can get your bowlers to have the batting exemption, vice versa, and of course any players that don't materially play at Div 2 level can get full exemptions. So hopefully that's clear, but it's quite clear on the website as well if you want to get to there. So we extended the deadline because I really wanted to be here tonight with you guys, so we could. It's always better to have something verbal than pinged out on social media. So it's another week from tonight to submit your team entries, which you can do so there. That's a specific. If you just head to slamcricket.co.uk, there's simple links from the homepage, but it's the specific URLs are there. Of course, you're always welcome to contact me directly if you've got any questions whatsoever. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to building on what was a start last year, where we've learned a lot of lessons, because there's a lot of midweek cricket already in Hampshire, and it's about bringing that all together. So there are regional competitions that they're winners, such as the Portsmouth League and the Southampton League and the Northants, and their winners come in at the sort of various points of the knockout stages to really create a county-wide competition. And it was it was really pleasing how we got it together last year, and with a much better run into it this year. Really looking forward to what we can achieve together. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Matt. I think what we're going to work on next is I'm going to present on the ECB County Grants Fund. As Ben said earlier, at Neil Higginson the ECB Recreational Facilities Planning Manager, is with us, keeping an eye on the Q&A that you're putting through to us. One thing on the subject of forgetting things, on the subject of the club survey, I should hasten to add that the information and findings from the club survey were shared with league chairs before Christmas. So just to let you know that that was the first part of the process, and that's ongoing. But on to county grants and to the next slide, please. So there are a couple of things which are really important to read. The way ECB are heading in terms of their support for facilities is a guide called Creating Welcoming Environments, which really is a great piece of a great document, a great piece of work, which kind of highlights really what makes clubs welcoming, what to the kind of changing demographic, the change. More young people, more females, to make facilities that might be a little old, that might need some updating. And to that end, it contains a really helpful checklist and survey that have been used by clubs. I've also put in the link there to the related funding that comes through, which is the county grant scheme. So how do you get involved? Well, you register at the ECB's investment management system. The contacts in Hampshire are as follows: myself and Neil, and the themes will be the same as 2022, creating welcoming environments, which is open to clubs with juniors and participating in All Stars and Dynamos. There's the providing enhanced facilities and playing opportunities for women and girls cricket and disability cricket. So that is for competitive cricket, essentially girls or women's hardball, and disability cricket. And lastly, but something I don't want to major on, is tackling climate change. So I shall come to that later. But unchanged for 2023 are various criteria, which would be that it's a minimum of 1,000 funding, maximum of 10,000, no requirement for match funding within the terms of the scheme. Clubs outside Hampshire, and we're aware that probably about 20% of clubs in the pyramid, and some are on the call tonight, are actually affiliate to another league board. It might be Isle of Wight, Sussex, Surrey, Berkshire, Wiltshire, or Dorset. So in that case, those clubs who are with us tonight joining us would apply to their home board, their home budget for that. Machinery is not eligible. The route for that is to apply under the ECB interest-free loan scheme. New or different for 2023, there is an expression of interest form. It's using the investment management system, but it is an outline of your application without necessarily the supporting information, uploads, policies, etc. And that's kind of the first stage, and that is open to clubs. One different this year from last year: net refurbishments, i.e. adjustments to existing facilities, are not eligible. The route for that is ECB interest-free loan. Last year, you were asked for 3 years accounts. This year, it's just the most recent year. Clubs must have adopted the ECB anti-discrimination policy. If an application requires planning, it must be submitted with the application, or you must have confirmation from the planning authority, which is usually the district, borough, or unitary authority, that planning is not required. That's something that you will also find in the Sport England small grant scheme as well. We also had quite a soft target last year, that we'd spend 20% of the budget on tackling climate change. Speaking to Neil earlier on today, we didn't meet that last year. We did about half that. We're very keen to meet it this year, and Neil's experience from dealing with his patch, which is all of the southwest and Wales all the way across to us, so a quarter of the ECB area, is that there, with energy bills and the economy and rising costs and interest in sustainability, then that is a theme that is gaining a lot more interest. We could flick over onto the next page, which is the point that Neil's asked me to stress, which is planning permission, and it is likely to be needed for a number of projects. If you could just click to the next one, thanks. And that will show the areas. I'm not going to go through them in detail, but do not assume that planning is not required. really and assume that something that you can avoid. You need confirmation that it's not required. And I think, to be honest, it's one of the tests of an application that there will be a cost of submitting a planning application. It is worth speaking to the local authority to see if they're willing to reduce those for a voluntary community organisation. We've had experience of that. But it is also a test of, if you're committed to the project, that this is part of the research that probably yourselves, clubs, are going to have to fund, because that will not fall within the grant application. So those kind of projects may well need planning permission, and you should certainly check with the relevant planning authority that it either get the planning or confirmation, written confirmation that it is not required, and that will help money flow through the system a lot quicker. So if we can have the next slide, please. I said we were going to talk about tackling climate change, and our aim is to spend 20% minimum of our budget on this theme. Some must-read information which the ECB have helpfully published are the guidance to energy saving for clubs, if you could click on to the next aspect of it, and also an ECB guide to sustainability. If you have a project and it's probably already in mind, it probably is one of those that's going to need planning, and that tends to take assume 12 weeks to go through the system. There are a couple of funding streams which can support projects, and indeed that projects last year have tapped into. So the first one is low case, which is low carbon Southeast England. That's actually EU funding. They're seeking applications up to a maximum. It was 10,000, it's gone up to 20,000. They're keen to get rid of the money. They're keen to get applications in by March and to have money spent by the end of June. And the reason for that is that it's European Union funding. And obviously, we're no longer the European Union, and the money has a finite time in order to be disposed of to the kind of projects that they're looking to dispose of. So that will fund up to 40% of a project. The second, recently relaunched Sport England Small Grants, was up to 10,000, is now up to 15,000. Do be aware that to apply for over 10,000, that you will need to comply with Sport England's Tier 1 governance requirements. And an example of what I was talking about earlier with Clubmark, the Clubmark constitution is in virtually every aspect compliant to Tier 1. There's one minor thing that might be looked at, but essentially it is compliant to those, and that to those criteria. And that means that clubs can apply for between 10 and 15,000 as opposed to 10,000. Sport England funding has previously been focused on COVID recovery, but they have now switched it back on to projects for community organisations. One of their major areas of focus is areas of deprivation, which may not apply to all cricket club areas. But another strand that I think is worth testing, and we take your feedback on this, is the projects that they want to support that are focusing on environmental sustainability. So that is essentially the county grant scheme, what you need to do and how you need to apply, and we'll be very keen to receive your expressions of interest. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks, Si. That brings us to the end of the presentation, so I hope you all found them useful. We haven't had a huge amount of questions through, actually, so we might as well just take that one now. Si, this is aimed at you. It was from Andrew, who asked it during Clubmark. It was on the financial management side. What do you typically see or suggest that clubs keep as a dedicated reserve? 1 year of income, more or less, do you feel?
It's not thanks, Ben, and thanks, Andrew. It's not specifically set out in Clubmark. It's just part of general sort of long-term planning. The things that clubs should pay attention to are having a sinking fund for machinery. So the people who are more skilled than me on the accounting side of things will show that an asset has a value and it depreciates over its lifetime, and you need to be aware of when that lifetime is likely to be and to be building up funds to replace that fund. Again, the figure that I've heard, but people with business experience will have far more grasp of this than myself, is to have up to 2 years turnover in hand. Now, I recognise that is kind of ideal world, but but it's really looking at situations where something unexpected happened. I'll turn back to sort of the season of 2012, where there was no cricket essentially for the first 5 weeks of the season, so clubs lost out on social income. So it's not a direct answer, Andrew, but I think it's as much as possible, and I have heard the phrase up to 2 years turnover in hand, plus a sinking fund for equipment to be replaced. But there's no hard and fast rule in Clubmark. What Clubmark asks you to do is to have accounts that are verified rather than audited, presented to members, and evidence that there's a bank account in the name of the club.
Excellent, thanks, Si. So as we said at the start, probably no need to do the FAQs page now, but we will be putting the recording onto YouTube and probably link from our website, and we'll make sure we send that out to you. So please feel free to share with other volunteers or members of your club that haven't been able to join us this evening. That just leaves me to say thank you very much to all the presenters. You did a great job in keeping to time, or perhaps even ahead of time. But more importantly, thank you to all of you club volunteers that have joined us this evening. Everybody at HCB wishes you well for an enjoyable and successful season. So enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.